Good evening. It's 6:30 on Thursday, the 17th of December, and we are commencing the meeting of the full council of Basingstoke-on-Deane. I'm Councillor Diane Taylor, Mayor of Basingstoke-on-Deane, and I will be chairing this meeting. Welcome to all councillors, participants and viewers to this council meeting, which is being held in accordance with the council's rules for virtual meetings, which in turn reflect the government's published regulations. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will also be available to view after the meeting has finished. As usual, I will just reiterate one or 2 points. Councillors are identified by name on the screen, and I will introduce them by name before they address the council. It's impossible to monitor the screens to see adequately actual raised hands, so councillors who wish to speak should use the raised hand button, if at all possible, and switch this off when they've spoken. I'm content for councillors to interrupt without using the raised hand button, only if they have a point of order or a point of personal explanation. Can councillors ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or on silent, along with any other devices that could interfere with the proceedings? Councillors should turn on their video link during the meeting and keep their microphones muted unless I have invited them to speak. Councillors are reminded that if they switch off their video link or move away from the camera, they will be treated as leaving the meeting and will not be able to take part in any vote on the item under discussion. As far as agreeing recommendations is concerned, I can't, as is the usual way, visually check that all councillors are happy with the recommendation. I will therefore, following the introduction of the item, ask if there is any dissent which would prompt a debate. If no one raises their virtual hand to indicate dissent, I will take it that we can agree the recommendation without discussion. Obviously, if there is dissent or a raised hand, we will debate and vote as usual. Voting, when we do it, will be taken by roll call. Before voting commences, all councillors will be asked to turn on their microphones. Each councillor will then be asked to indicate whether they are for or against the motion or recommendation, or whether they wish to abstain. And once their vote has been cast, councillors should switch off their microphones. Officers present will only switch their video link on during the proceedings when they are presenting or where they wish to be invited to speak by me as chair. I'll confirm the name of any visiting speakers at the appropriate time in the agenda and invite them to speak via audio link, and for the first time, they will be seen on screen as well. If councillors have any problems with their connection, please advise the Democratic Support Officer who is there to help. Okay, now, as is customary, may I invite the Mayor's chaplain, Dr. Andy Taylor, to say a few words and pray. Councillors who do not wish to take part in this item may, of course, switch off their sound. Andy.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May we begin this evening with a moment of quiet while we remember our friend and colleague Anne Court, who passed away 3 weeks ago. Let's just have a moment of silence. Father God, we do thank you for Anne Court. We thank you for the years of service she put in here as a councillor, as mayor. And we just thank you for her life. Father, we also now pray for her family, for Richard, their children, Claire and Stephen, and their own families. We imagine that Christmas must be a really difficult time for the family now, without a wife and a mum who would normally be so much around them. And in the midst of their sorrow and grief, may they know a joy as they recount their many memories together. May their tears be mixed with laughter. May any old wounds be healed. And we just pray, Lord, that you will bless this family over this Christmas period in particular. So rather than give you a message, I'd just like to pray a blessing over you all as you approach Christmas. So, dear Father God, I just want to thank you for every member of this council, for the officers that are here. Thank you for the work that they do on behalf of their constituents. Thank you, Lord, for the work they do on behalf of the whole borough. And Father, just thank you for the way that takes our town forward. It's a great town. So, Father, we just pray over this Christmas period, a difficult time with all that's going on. I pray, Lord, that you will bless each one. I pray for the peace of God to rest on every household represented here. May your goodness be upon them. May this Christmas period be fulfilling for them with their families. May we all be changed in some way as a result of this Christmas in a good way. So may your goodness be upon each one. And I've just prayed for this council meeting that you will bless it, that in the discussions, in maybe the disagreements and all that comes through, that good things will arise and good decisions will be made. And I pray just a blessing on each one as
Amen. Andy, you just muted your last few words, but we all say amen to it. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Lovely. I'm just looking up now so that people who weren't taking part know that we're back to normal and they can come back to us. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's move on to the first item on tonight's agenda, which is to receive apologies for absence.
Madam Mayor, can I apologise for Councillor Lane Still, who might be a little late in arriving with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCormick.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to offer apologies for Councillors Keating and Cooper.
Thank you very much. Do we have any others from the leaders?
Oh yeah, apologies from Councillor James and Councillor Potter. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right, moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Can you indicate if you wish to declare an interest? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a pecuniary interest in item 8, so I will absent myself from the meeting at that point.
Thank you very much. Any others? Okay. So Councillor Reid, if you could lower your hand, that would be helpful. Right, next, the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of October. These can be found on pages 7 to 28 of the agenda book. I will move these from the chair unless I see any hands. Okay, I move this from the chair. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has just seconded it. So we take them as read. Now we move to the announcements. I just have one really. Obviously, our thoughts are dominated this evening by one of our colleagues who is sadly missing. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that the sudden death of Councillor and former Mayor Anne Court has come as a great shock and brings immense sadness. Councillor Rattigan and I had the honour of representing the council at Anne's funeral yesterday at St Nicholas Church in Newnham. I know that if we had not been restricted by COVID regulations, the church would have been packed with those wishing to pay their respects. Anne's family will be organising a Thanksgiving service in the new year when restrictions are lifted. Anne was a respected colleague who brought experience, wisdom and humour to us all in this council. When I was first elected, Anne had already been a councillor for many years, nearly a decade, I believe, or over a decade, and I recall what a clear and authoritative chair she was of the Development Control Committee. The tribute to Anne that was given at the funeral described and honoured her so well. This council has lost a brave and much respected member. Councillor Rattigan, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are all diminished by the loss of any councillor, but especially one like Councillor Anne Court. She epitomise the sense that public service is not for the faint-hearted. Bold, I think, forthright in her views, but a dedicated community champion. I know that all of us will miss somebody like that amongst us this evening, but her warm memory will last as we continue public service in the months and years to come. And I look forward to us upholding what she held true, that put people before self. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rattigan. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of my group, I'd like to pay tribute to Councillor Ann Court. Her dedication to her ward of Kempshott was exemplary. She was so passionate about the area that she lived in, and she will be greatly missed by the people of Kempshott, including members of my family who live in Kempshott.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we all agree with all of those sentiments. She is going to be greatly, greatly missed. Okay, so we'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is number 5, questions from members of the public. And we have 6 in all. So can I first welcome Mr. Paul Beavers, who we should now be able to see as well as hear. Mr. Beavers, are you there? Mr. Beavers? Just wait a minute or two.
Can you hear me now? I've just been offered unmute.
Ah, thank you. Yes, Mr. Beavers, we can hear you. We can't sadly see you at the moment, but...
Yeah, I've just realised.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Lovely. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Would you like to put the first of your 3 questions, please?
Yes, thank you. Will Cabinet prioritise planning for landscape protections and ecological / nature recovery networks ahead of planning for development and hard infrastructure for the South West Basingstoke vision and at every stage of policy making and plan making from now on, so that nature receives the prioritisation it warrants?
Thank you very much, Mr. Beavers. I think this is one for Councillor Raffel. Councillor Raffel.
Madam Mayor, can I thank Mr. Beavers once again for a useful and pertinent question, holding us all up to the standard that is expected of us. The short answer, I hope and expect and would want, is yes. The long answer is as follows. A sustainable future and the protection of the environment lie at the heart of the vision for the land north of the M3 at Junction 7 and in the wider plan making role of the Borough Council. The draft vision, which obviously is being consulted on at the moment, includes a number of principles to guide the future of this area, which include prominent references to ensuring sustainable development and combating climate change. It includes protecting local villages and heritage assets and delivering a green infrastructure network. The draft vision highlights some of the key environmental assets of this area, including existing woodland. At the same time, the vision sets out how important landscape, biodiversity and heritage resources can be protected through such measures as potentially designating green corridors and also strategic gaps for North Waltham and Dummer to complement the existing gap for Oakley. This council has a duty in the exercise of its planning powers to ensure a net gain for biodiversity. I'm confident that the vision will, in the event of it being adopted by the council early next year, provide a strategic framework that ensures both sustainable development and the protection of our key environmental resources. This emphasis on protecting the environment and ensuring a sustainable future will continue as core and guiding objectives of the local plan update, in line with national and local priorities. This will be balanced with ensuring that the future needs of the borough are met and that the necessary infrastructure is in place to deliver a truly sustainable future.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beavers, do you have a supplementary to that question?
It's a bit difficult to work one out for that. However, I would just like to emphasise that I think that self-evidently that Southwest Basingstoke vision prioritises development over nature, as the council has done over 60 years. It does not come across as showing at least even equal treatment with nature, and I hope Councillor Raffel will give that some thought.
Okay, the question was, I'm asking Councillor Raffel to give some thought.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm happy to respond to that too,
Okay,
if
thank
you
you.
wish, Madam. Can I say to Paul Beavers, his instincts are of course right. The land comes into question because of development proposals by landowners, whether it be for housing or for hospitals or for other things that may be being discussed. And that in itself causes harm to nature. And that harm is something that I'm acutely aware of. I want to see us adopting a net biodiversity gain in everything that we do now before the legislation comes into force, through the environmental bill, through other acts that are coming through from Parliament. And I want us to, as it were, be seen, those champions on behalf of the natural environment, as equal partners in this discussion, not as afterthoughts, not the sort of the developer's choice comes first, the planning permission comes, and afterwards we put in a bit of greenery here and there, which may be the way that things have been done 30 or 40 years ago in the borough, but we're much more aware of the consequences of what we're doing now. And part of what we do in the natural environment, I think, is so linked to what we've been talking about with climate change, that climate change, the harm to the natural environment, are partners interconnected at so many different levels. And yet with climate change, we've talked about having an emergency, but apparently there is no apparent emergency in the natural environment. And I wouldn't be surprised if before too long that the natural environment will be spoken of as in an emergency situation too.
It already is, actually.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beavers, would you like to ask your second question?
Yes, thank you. Natural England agrees that, given that the gap between the North Wessex area of outstanding natural beauty and the South Downs National Park is all within the same landscape character area and short catchments, putting effort into bridging the gap makes sense. And bridging the gap makes sense from a landscape and ecological perspective. The draft vision for Southwest Basingstoke undermines such an enterprise. Will Council commit to work with stakeholders, Local Plan 6.33, to protect the landscape between the NWAONB and the SDNP, including undeveloped land either side of the M3 and the A30 between junction 7 and 8, and plan for ecological / nature recovery networks and crossings for wildlife, as well as extensive recreational access for Basingstoke?
Councillor Raffel.
Well, again, another fantastic question, and actually one that's very close to my heart as the member for other parts not far away from the area in question. Can I say that, again, the short answer is yes, but the long explanation will come. But before I give it, I want to just say this. It's been long thought that the area known as the North Hampshire Downs, which stretches from Crondall perhaps through to Dummer, has missed out on being protected. And because it's been missed out, we have what in environmental terms is a lacuna between the South Downs National Park and the North Wessex Downs area of outstanding natural beauty. And we're now realizing that with that lacuna is the fact that developers will exploit it and potentially permanently harm our landscape and biodiversity that depends on this open countryside for interconnectivity. And I think planning authorities and perhaps even councillors for a long time just haven't got how the natural environment needs to have connectivity. We've carved through the countryside with motorways when in times there could have been bridges and underpasses and and even smaller tunnels that would have allowed natural corridors to continue. And I do appreciate the area around Junction 7 is crucial, because there is a bridge, and I mean a natural environment bridge, believe it or not, that I know that Mr. Beavers is well aware of, that does link the south and the north of the M3 at that part. And obviously any potential development around that could be harmed significantly. So it is something we need to bear in mind. I'll give you, if I may, Madam Mayor, the more natural, the longer answer, which is that protecting areas of outstanding natural beauty in the wider countryside within the borough has been a long established and central part of planning policy for many years. It will continue to be so in the future. And any potential development in this area, whether for much needed homes or for a health campus or state-of-the-art hospital, will only occupy a very small portion of the countryside which links to the North Wessex Downs areas of outstanding natural beauty with the South Downs National Park. The proposals within the vision will not prejudice the ability of the area linked to the AMB and the natural park to protect and enhance its landscape and biodiversity assets in the future. I just want to say this. Well, that actually is a promise, but I think, in fact, I think it's actually something that we as the council need to make sure happens, because there's one thing being very excited about a new hospital, which I am, but it's another thing making sure that these corridors are explicit at the start of any process, and that developers who want to build houses, whoever they are, realize that they share this space with the natural environment, and the residents who may live in these new houses are going to be the future stewards of this natural environment, and therefore we have to have that balance in the discussion. So I'm hoping that as we move forward with discussions about green corridors and strategic gaps, that these green corridors, the need to plant significant areas of woodland, the need to have areas which have biodiversity improvement will, as it were, overall offset the harm that might be caused by the development in the first place. But it's something that we as councillors have to actively push for. We cannot just have regard to someone else is going to sort this out, because it isn't. It's us at this moment in time who've got to sort this out, whilst we, the other half of the balance, is get very excited about a new hospital in due course.
Thank you very much. That was a comprehensive answer. So we'll move on to your third question, if I may, Mr. Beavers.
Okay. Why does the vision for Southwest Basingstoke not include or make reference to the diagram on page 55 of the BNDBC Green Infrastructure Strategy, already illustrating opportunities for corridors and biodiversity, specifically in the area of Southwest Basingstoke?
Councillor O'Fell.
Madam Mayor, you'll be pleased. I'm going to give a shorter answer, and it's a slightly technical one. The plan on page 55 of the Green Infrastructure Strategy is a borough-wide plan showing potential biodiversity connectivity. Any potential development in the vision area will translate this broad picture into a more detailed network of connectivity at the local level. Safeguarding green corridors and enhancing biodiversity is an important part of the vision. The vision has a principle that relates directly to green infrastructure. Indeed, the green infrastructure network illustrated in the draft vision is shown to link to the surrounding areas. Any potential development in the vision area will build upon and help to deliver the green infrastructure strategy. In other words, the two things are interrelated, even if the diagram isn't referred to.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beavers, is that okay? Do you want to ask a supplementary on that one?
No, we'll settle for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your questions. That's brilliant. Can I next welcome to our meeting Sheila Peacock? Sheila, are you there?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me now?
Hello, Sheila. Yes, we can hear you. We can't yet see you, but we can certainly hear you.
Yeah,
oh, there you are.
You can see me. Right, yes. Thank you very much indeed. Hang on now. Can I see my text? Would the Cabinet Minister, the Cabinet Members for Development and Improvement of a Regeneration Property be willing to make a statement on how the council intends to use the opportunity of the Many Down project to generate high quality long-term jobs and training opportunities in sustainable and zero carbon construction and recycling and related industry.
Thank you very much for your question. Councillor Isaac, would you like to take that one?
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Sheila. Jobs and skills are a vital component, not just to the successful delivery of Many Down, but to the borough's recovery from the pandemic. The green industry offers new opportunities, and we will ensure that we support business opportunities in this sector. To deliver Many Down, the two councils undertook a thorough procurement process to select a high quality joint venture partner. That procurement process required bidders to provide a draft construction, employment and skills plan. In July of this year, we entered into the joint venture with our selected partner, Urban and Civic, and the Wellcome Trust. And it is relevant to the question tonight that Urban and Civic promotes a jobs and skills service at its development at Alconbury in Cambridgeshire, now under construction. This is being done through a jobs brokerage scheme, an on-site business incubator building, and a construction industry training board hub to support local people into jobs in construction. At its sites at Rugby in Warwickshire and Newark in Nottinghamshire, as well as at Alconbury, UNC has established ongoing relationships with local schools and colleges to effect introductions with house builders on apprenticeships and work experience, as well as hosting site visits to educate students on its work. UNC also sits as business advisors on college boards in its areas and is in discussions with authorities in Cambridgeshire and the West Midlands and the CITB on post-COVID training initiatives for its sites. For Many Down, we have agreed a business plan which sets out how we will bring forward an employment and skills plan, an ESP. The ESP will be tailored to the specific challenges facing Basingstoke, such as the recovery from COVID-19. UNC are aiming to have an ESP in place by spring next year, and they've already begun to engage with local businesses, the college, the M3 LEP, Basingstoke Transition Network, to understand the local issues of skills and employment and how the Many Down supply chain can support new apprenticeships. UNC are also considering a bid to the National Skills Academy to support training in construction in Basingstoke, including training in sustainable construction methods. To conclude, Sheila, you can be sure that this council, as a long-term investor developer in Many Down, both north and south, will prioritise employment in jobs that will directly relate to and enable us to meet our commitment to be net zero carbon as a borough by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your question, Sheila. I think that's probably a comprehensive answer for you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I now invite Miranda Chubb to join our meeting? Welcome, Miranda Chubb, if you're there.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, we can see you and hear you. So would you like to put your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's now been nearly 18 months since the Council declared a climate emergency. Please can the Council advise on the progress towards their 2030 carbon neutral target and the Basingstoke Horizon 2050 sustainability commitments? As climate change is arguably the greatest threat to the world, including our borough, it would seem appropriate for there to be an update on progress towards these targets at every full Council meeting. This would help to monitor progress and plan the acceleration of action on areas that need an increased response. Also, please can you advise how Basingstoke and Deane will be taking action on the areas outlined in the government's 10-point plan for the green industrial revolution, which include things like advancing wind and other large-scale renewable energy options like solar panels, driving the growth of low-carbon hydrogen, accelerating the shift to zero emission vehicles, such as including the provision for charging of electric vehicles, developing green public transport, cycling and walking, creating greener buildings, for example, ensuring new residential and non-residential buildings are constructed to Passive House net zero standards, and that any new buildings incorporate renewable energy, also retrofitting existing buildings to Passive House standards. Also protecting our natural environment, including green infrastructure and the protection and development of the nature recovery networks. I know Paul has also mentioned protecting our local wildlife and ensuring an increase in biodiversity, and also driving the growth and use of carbon capture, usage and storage in our area.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eachus.
Thank you. So thank you for your question, Miranda. As you say, climate change is arguably the greatest threat to us, and the council hasn't lost sight of the importance of tackling the climate emergency, and that's despite all the work that's had to be done because of the immediate threat posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. So during 2020, we have been working on our new climate change and air quality strategy, which was recently consulted on, and I have seen you've replied to that in quite detail. So again, thank you very much for that. We are taking on board all of the comments from yourself and everybody else, and expect the final version to be adopted in spring next year. The strategy sets a framework for action moving forwards, and alongside this, I'm aware you've seen the council's action plan. So this sets out the planned actions, including those that will reduce our own direct carbon footprint and actions we can take to enable and inspire action throughout the borough to progress towards the 2030 target. Progress has already been made in a number of these areas. I won't go through everything, but I'll give you some examples. The council now procures renewable energy for all of our operational portfolio, where we are responsible for paying for utilities. We have started an update to our local plan, which sets the planning policy for the borough. Tackling the climate emergency is and will be a key aspect of this as we go through it, and climate change will be the golden thread that will run through that document. A new electric vehicle charging hub in Feathers Yard is now open, and that significantly expands our local offer and provides a dedicated facility for drivers of electric vehicles visiting the town centre. It's the first publicly owned charging hub in Hampshire, and I appreciate that's just the start, but we do have very committed and enthusiastic officers looking at other opportunities for charging infrastructure elsewhere in the borough, and looking to work with Hampshire County Council to look at charging infrastructure in residential areas. We're also working very closely with and supporting community groups who have their own climate groups, so places like Whitchurch and Overton. In terms of update, we've already agreed that we will an update on the plan at each yearly at a Community Environment and Partnerships Committee. Finally, it's worth flagging that the borough-wide emissions utilise national data sets, and they are published by the government, but there is a lag in this data being published, so we do have to work with the data that we have, but we have provided other indicators to measure progress of our actions, as well as intended to report the overall decrease in the borough-wide emissions. And as I say, we will be reporting committees, and that will be late autumn, early winter each year. Lastly, in relation to the government's 10-point plan, we are thrilled that the government has set an ambitious target in clearer areas of focus, and a number of those areas are more relevant to us than others and feature in our emerging strategy and action plan, touching on greener buildings, facilitating the shift to zero emission vehicles, and as we've also spoken about a great deal this evening, the natural environment. Actions in these areas we will continue to develop, and in addition we will continue to support national actions that are outside of direct areas of interest, such as advancing offshore wind or nuclear power. And then I just want to say that I do agree that the government have a huge role to play in this, and we do as a local authority as well, but we cannot achieve these targets on our own. These are really ambitious targets where we want to achieve them. We're doing all we can to do so, but every single person has a role to play, even if it is just a small role. It all helps to hit those targets. So as a council, not only doing our own thing, we are trying to encourage behaviour change among residents and things as well.
Thank you very much. That was a long question and a long answer, so we've used up our time. Could I just say, Councillor Eachus, that your sound is a little bit broken up, so I don't know if perhaps Miranda, is it Miranda, would like to have that written down, emailed to her, so that she knows what you said.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Miranda, for asking your question. Finally, we have a familiar face. Can I invite Martin Bierman to come along, please? Martin? Martin Bierman?
Right, I seem to be here. Thank you. So
there you are. Lovely. Welcome.
It moves around when you switch me on. So,
would you like to ask your question, Martin?
Yes, indeed. Thank you for your welcome. The usability of many local pavements and footpaths is much reduced by overhanging vegetation. Given the fact that social distancing is still strongly advised and likely to be so for several months ahead, space remains at something of a premium. The situation is frequently exacerbated by the presence of cars either partially or totally blocking pavements and dropped curbs. Would the council firstly allocate enhanced maintenance resources to achieve clear passage for pedestrians, especially those with limited mobility, and carers pushing prams, which I'm very familiar with, and secondly, vigorously endorse the government moves to make London-style pavement stroke verge parking constraints apply throughout England, and obviously particularly Basingstoke. Thank you.
Thank you. Another one for Councillor Eachus.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Martin. So if the overgrowth originates from private land, it needs to be reported to HCC as the Highways Authority, because they have the specific powers to require the landowner to cut back their vegetation. For our own land and open spaces, we do undertake annual cuts to provide sufficient clearance for pedestrian and cycles where they are permitted, but we also respond to regrowth in between these visits where safety and access problems arise, and these concerns can be reported to the council either online or by contacting the contact centre. And I do know we have got a great team who do respond to these matters. In relation to the pavement parking, the Department for Transport published a consultation pavement parking, which closed on the 22nd of November this year. The options being considered by the government include more parking enforcement powers, improving traffic regulation, order process, but also the introduction of a London-style pavement parking prohibition throughout England. The consultation is part of the government's inclusive transport strategy and the government's wider agenda to improve accessible transport. The consultation, as I say, did close on the 22nd of November, and we await the government's response to the consultation feedback. The London pavement prohibition allows for London councils to introduce exemptions by passing administrative resolutions. So, for example, narrow streets where pavement parking is essential to ensure traffic flows and to prevent vehicle displacement where there is nowhere else to park. A national pavement parking prohibition would be the most significant change to English parking law in several decades, and local authorities, if that was passed, would need to undertake a substantial amount of work to prepare for it. Each local authority would need to carry out a survey of their road network, identify areas where pavement parking is routine, determine where it remains necessary, pass resolutions to permit it, and place traffic signs and bay markings to inform drivers where pavement parking is still permitted. So we will be waiting for the outcome of that consultation, which closed at the end of November.
Thank you very much. Martin, did you hear all that?
Well, I was just going to say, may I have the same privilege of the writing, because I only got about 2/3 of it, if that.
Sorry, no idea.
Can I, assuming that it wasn't answered in my supplementary, may I just quickly ask whether the portfolio holder has recently pushed a pram around the area and is aware of how these things do interfere with safe transit and how often one actually has to walk into the roads? And is she aware of the fact that a lot of the overhanging vegetation is near schools? And as we're trying to encourage people to walk to school, those should be priority areas. And certainly, can I tell her that in Chinham, much of the overhanging vegetation is from council-owned land. And I do appreciate that, that private land is more of a problem for you, as is county land. But when it's our land, we really should be getting at it more quickly when it's near schools, if in particular, if I may say so. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Noted, thank you. And like I say, those issues can be reported, and the team do get out there as much as they can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, the other questioners. Nice to see you. That finishes our question time for members of the public. And we'll now move on, if I may, to item 6 of the agenda, petitions. And we have no petitions. So the next item is resignations and appointments. Now, we do need to deal first with the report that was attached to the update sheet, which deals with the revised scheme of proportionality and allocation of seats following the sad passing of Councillor Court. And I wonder if I could ask Fiona Thompson just to explain this, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as you say, due to the very sad death of Councillor Court, there is a legal requirement to review the proportional allocation of seats on committees. The report sets out the revised proportionality, and paragraph 3.5 indicates that agreement has been reached by the group leaders as to the changes that they'll take place. That is in effect one change, that the Conservative group will have one less seat on Development Control Committee, and that the Independent Forum gain a seat on the same committee. The report asks the Council to agree the revised scheme. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. So as you heard, this has been agreed by the group leaders. Are we all agreed with this principle to carry us through until the next election? If you could just raise your hand if you have any problem with this. No hands? Okay. We will say that that's been agreed.
And seconded.
Thank you very much. So that's carried. I think probably the first thing then is to ask Councillor Tilbury if you'd like to propose who will become the new member of the Development Control Committee. Councillor Tilbury.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That'll be Councillor Paul Harvey as the new member of the committee, and I'll be the reserve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure that's agreed by all. Councillor Rattigan, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of Councillor Ann Court's sad demise, I would like to nominate on EPH Councillor Jenny Vox as our committee member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's noted. Can I just ask the leaders if there are any other proposed changes on any of the committees? Councillor Rattigan, your hand is still up, but should it be down?
Yeah, no, it was just to say, Madam Mayor, that I'm content as it sits. I just thought you'd want to know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm assuming there are no other changes. And then we'll just move on to outside bodies very briefly. First of all, can you raise your hand if you wish to propose someone for either of the 2 current vacancies, which is the Basingstoke Music Festival and Carla the Arts? No? Okay. Is there anybody who wishes to resign at this stage from an outside body? Okay, so we'll leave those as they are. Right, moving on therefore to item number 8 on the agenda. At this point, I think Councillor Reid will absent herself. Think very briefly. This is the Council Tax Discretionary Discounts and Council Tax Support Scheme 2021 and 22. And this report can be found on pages 31 to 40 of our papers. And there is a recommendation to approve the 4 items listed on page 31. I'll just very briefly tell you what they are. They're not exactly contentious. Number 1, that the Council Tax Support Scheme is unchanged. 2, the Care Leavers Council Tax Discount is unchanged. 3, the Council Tax Discretionary Discounts are unchanged, except for 4, the long-term empty properties over 10 years, for which the premium will increase from 200 to 300%. Now, if anybody wishes to speak or to dispute any of that, would you raise your hand now, please? Councillor McCormick.
I'm not disputing any of this, but maybe I could have a written answer as to why it is that long-term properties have to be empty for 10 years before attracting a premium. That seems a really long time to have an empty property. It would be in dire need of repair if it had been empty that long length of time. And is there any scope for reducing that figure, given the pressures that we have on housing in the borough?
That's a point. Does anybody wish to field that, or shall we leave that for between the two meetings?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm struggling to find my electronic hand.
Okay.
If you're happy. So I'm honestly, off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly when it kicks in, but it goes up to 200% premium far earlier than 10 years. I think it's at 2 years. But it's up at 200%. It's just at the 10 years that it's going up again to the 300%.
Thank you very much. But let's hope that there aren't many like that in our borough. I can think of one. Okay, now if I don't see any hands, I think I will just move this from the chair.
And seconded.
Thank you very much. So that's passed, and somebody has any contact with Councillor Reid, she can come back into our meeting. Right, item number 9. Again, this is a very straightforward one. The change of name of parish council under section 75 of the Local Government Act 1972. On pages 41 to 48 of the agenda book, you can find the detail of the proposal, which is simply to change the name of Wootton St Lawrence Parish Council to Wootton St Lawrence and Ramsdell Parish Council. Councillor Robinson, Tristan Robinson, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Only very briefly to say that I fully support the proposed name of Wootton St Lawrence Parish Council to be Wootton St Lawrence with Ramsdell. One of the issues that the village encountered, or the villages encountered with the neighbourhood plan, was a reticence by the villages on one side of the A339 to respond to something that they considered to be only concerned with the villages the other side. And this parish does include a number of smaller villages. Wootton St Lawrence is one of many, and indeed that is the smaller part of the parish. So a name such as Wootton St Lawrence with Ramsdell would be much more suitable for the parish as a whole. So I'd like to propose or second this if possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I will obviously gladly second that, and if I don't see any hands, I will assume that we are all happy with it. Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much. Item number 10, a dispensation consideration. This can be found on pages 49 to 52 of the papers, and this just explains that it's to do with a dispensation sought for Councillor Sean Keating, who, because of health issues, will be unable to attend further meetings until May 2021. That's the end of the municipal year. I'm sure I'm watching for hands, but I'm sure we'll all agreed. And also I'm sure that everyone will join me in wishing Councillor Keating, who's a long-standing colleague and former mayor, a speedy and full recovery. We wish you well, Sean and Gwen. Okay, I confirm that that's therefore agreed. Thank you. Item 11, calendar of meetings for 21-22, which can be found on page 53. This lists the meetings from next May onwards. I'm not sure there's a great deal to say, but I'm sure you've all looked at it. You'll notice that the annual council meeting and the selection meeting are on successive Thursdays, and that there are no committee meetings between those dates. And in fact, the first meeting is the viewing panel, which is on June the 4th. So once again, I'm watching for hands to see if anybody wishes to speak or express concern. And Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've noted that there are a number of incidents where the audit and accounts and licensing committee meetings are being held on Mondays during the evening, when that's not normally been a feature of council meetings, and councillors may have other commitments on a Monday, community commitments, group meetings in some cases. Is there any particular reason why a Monday was chosen?
It's because they used to be daytimes. And it's just been moved to evening.
You're not muted. Oh, no. Sorry, I don't have anybody who is going to jump to give you an answer at this stage, Councillor McCormick, but I'm sure it will come to you after this meeting at some stage. It's a good question, though. If we could pass it for now, and obviously if there's an answer to the question that requires it to be revised, it will happen and we'll review it again next time. If there are no other hands, we'll move on with that question pending. Thank you very much. Right, item number 12, we move on to our first motion concerning doctors' surgeries. As always, please indicate electronically if you wish to take part in the discussion. Can I invite Councillor Kim Taylor to propose the motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, may I just be able to say a warm season's greetings to all members and to all members of our staff, and to thank them all for the work that they've done throughout the year, and no doubt the hard work that they will be doing in the forthcoming year as well, as we still struggle to get over the pandemic. Madam Mayor, as I propose this motion, it feels a little like a rerun of Groundhog Day. On the 19th of July 2018, I stood in our real chamber to second a motion that the CEP be asked to review and gather evidence of the impact of GP mergers and the reshaping of GP services, so that we were able to better respond to our residents' concerns and issues. And the reason for that motion then was a surprise and poorly consulted on merger between three surgeries, Gillies, Camrose and Hackwood Road. At the time, residents and local councillors expressed grave concern about the wisdom and effectiveness of such a merger, creating a supersized practice. There were fears of a negative impact on the quality of services. Here we are, a mere 28 months later, and the newly formed practice has sadly, but somewhat predictably, failed. The current position is that the practice has now been sold to a private organisation, Operose Health, which is owned by Centene, a US medical giant. Again, very little prior notice or consultation with residents or councillors took place. Apart from a bad case of déjà vu, I am now also suffering with a dose of uncomfortable premonition. Our experiences of corporate ownership of GP surgeries in Basingstoke has not been a good one. We saw what happened in the Beggarwood and Rookstown surgeries when they were taken over, and what resulted was a slow and very painful deterioration of healthcare services to our residents in the borough. In our Horizons 2050 vision, we acknowledge the importance of health and its links to the quality of life and the need to reduce health inequalities. That document also acknowledges residents' concerns with gaps in GP provision. Having a good local healthcare system is also essential to the prosperity of the borough. It's one of the main factors that employers, along with education, will consider before relocating to the area. Only a few weeks ago, we also heard the Bermuda and Marlow practice will not be renewing their contract with the CCG, and so a further takeover or partnership is required. So now we have a situation where over the last 3 years, we have seen 6 GP practices in difficulty, and in the last 2 months, 2 have given contracts back. These last 2 surgeries serve nearly half of the Basingstoke town population, and this is not really what residents want from their health services. I do appreciate that there are changes in the world of CCGs who are subject themselves to mergers, but they do have responsibilities and oversight of this situation, and it is vital that the council develop a much closer and a more regular and a more robust working partnership with them. There is no doubt that the people who work in our care sector and our NHS staff in hospitals and our GPs all over the country work very hard and have the best interests of their patients in mind. They have been and still are simply heroic during this pandemic. However, we must not let our admiration or respect or sentimentality overcome our duty to work to create a borough that meets the needs of residents, and that includes health and well-being. Many of those affected by the Gillies, Camrose and Hackwood merger and by the Beggarwood and Rooksdown situation told us that they felt their voices were not heard when they raised concerns, and that this significantly delayed intervention and action to recover the situation. We must not let that happen again. It is our job to be their voices, and we must represent them both locally and nationally to those with power and influence. I therefore recommend this motion to members.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Watts, you are the seconder. Do you want to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak now. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I second this motion. As Councillor Taylor said, it was prompted by the sale of the Camrose, Gillies and Hackwood practices to a American business, medical business. As members might know, this partnership is the largest primary care facility in North Hampshire. And many residents, South Ham residents, Brighton Hill residents, who use these practices are being very concerned that it's being sold off to an American business. Actually, I had a text from a resident who said, has the council got anything to do with selling our surgeries off to the Yanks? And I went back to him, I said, no, we haven't. So these changes are, as already stated, there's no accountability for these changes and there's no scrutiny. I mean, the patients of Camrose, Gillies and Hackwood have already seen the deterioration since this merger 3 years ago. Before the pandemic, it was extremely difficult to get an appointment. The phone system deteriorated and we've seen fragmenting of the services. I mean, I've been a patient of Gillies since the 70s, since we moved to Basingstoke, and I've always gone to the Gillies Centre, but now I have to go to South Ham sometimes. That's not a problem for myself. I can walk or cycle or drive, but it's a big issue for lots of other residents who've got mobility problems. They have to rely on family and friends to get to these different facilities. Sorry, my dog. Yeah, so they have to rely on family and friends or an inadequate bus service to get them to these practices. Sorry, I've been put off by my dog. I'll tell him off later. So obviously, I think it's quite right that the council would need to scrutinise these changes. I mean, what's happened to the GP services since the Langsley reforms have actually been outrageous. And we were promised by the coalition government we were going to have no top-down reorganisation, but this is a top-down reorganisation with no scrutiny at all. So it's only right that this council actually scrutinises and the CEP committee has a look at these changes. As Councillor Taylor says, or as we've seen since the Langsley reforms, as the deterioration in the NHS services over the years, and it's only right that we as a council scrutinise those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The primary care sector at Basingstoke faces pressures which have been building for some time, as Councillor Taylor describes. We have seen what happened with Rooksdown and Beggarwood surgeries a couple of years ago, and thankfully they are now much improved. This pressure is seen across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and in fact the country. Practices everywhere are seeking new ways of working to cope with immediate demands and to build in resilience for the future, consulting on new ways of operating. Well, they call it consultation. Councillor Taylor is quite right that it is never enough, and it is never with enough time. The pressures facing practices are many. We know there's much publicised difficulty in recruiting GPs, that there's sort of specific difficulties around GP partners recruitment, GPs wanting a portfolio career, working part-time, doing other things, and the same things apply for other members of staff. Our North Hampshire CCG, as Councillor Taylor described, is now working in a broader partnership of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight partnerships of CCGs. So sort of who we're doing business with can actually be quite difficult to work out sometimes, and perhaps close relationships that we've created perhaps then move in a different way that we don't quite understand for some time until they've got their own house in order. I would like to be actively involved in our efforts to support them to maintain the strengths of the services and support their staff. The CCG does much to sort of work with sort of quality and safety. And the one thing that I would say, it's heartening to know that the CQC currently shows, except for 2 of our GP practices, that they've got a rating of good, with none rated as in special measures. I hope we can invite the CCG to come and talk to us as a council and explain in early 2021 to the CEP committee what structures will be in place, who will be running services, who will be running GP practices, who will be running primary care networks, in some respects, who will be running what will be the new CCG. Our residents and therefore patients are always concerned about change. And do you know what? I can't be more disappointed in our local NHS administrators and managers behind the scenes who are pushing the paper about than the email that we received, all of us received at 4:43, I think it was, this afternoon, about the consultation that we were only told as a council yesterday at the CEP committee for our new hospital that would start in January and go on until April, which actually probably won't start for another 6 months. And do you know what? Raising concerns and questions about services, it isn't good enough to then leave patients and staff not knowing what the options are, not knowing what the likely answers are going to be. And do you know what? We should hold the NHS to account to explain to us how we can have some confidence that new services that are being designed, plans are in place to make them work, and of course, more importantly, that what they promise us is being monitored and evaluated. So I wholeheartedly support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bound. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Kim and Gary for bringing the motion to full council this evening? I think it is a major issue in Basingstoke, and their postbags and my own postbag and lots of our postbags reflect the level of concern that residents have about their GPs, about their practices, and about the future of them in our town and in our borough. And I think it isn't solely related to one practice, as has already been said this evening. There are many experiences across numerous practices over the course of quite a number of years that have led us to this point where we are, with reason, questioning the accountability and the scrutiny of the practices, of the operation of GP services in Basingstoke and Deane, and quite rightly so. I'm almost torn in some ways, because on the one hand, I don't like criticising the National Health Service when the issue is also related to one of funding. We have a GP shortage in the town. That comes from a very simple reason. There aren't enough GPs. We aren't training and funding enough GPs. That's the reality. On the other hand, the management of those practices is worthy of scrutiny and accountability, because those people running those practices have chosen to work with an American healthcare company who, quite predatory in the way they've approached it, in my opinion, have sought the opportunity of taking over a struggling surgery, and there is no guarantee that they aren't doing it for profit. There's no guarantee that the services will be protected. There's no guarantee that the residents of our borough will see improvements in services other than just good wishes and goodwill and good wanting. When the merger happened at the Gillies, the Camrose and the Hackwood surgery, there were promises made that that would solve the GP problem. There were promises made that care would improve. There were promises made that the CCG thought it had got it right. Well, it clearly hadn't. And I think the issues that have been raised by residents are quite severe and are quite important. They talk about access, the lack of it, the inability to get appointments, the inability to get the care they need. They talk about the lack of communication and engagement by those surgeries. And again, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because healthcare workers are doing the very best they can in very challenging circumstances with limited funding to deliver the services that have come under such pressure over so many years now. And yet the reality is that residents are on the end of that when they don't get the care they need. They can't get hold of the people they want to get hold of to have the right care given to them. And when they do, it's difficult to get it working with each other. So between the hospital, the surgeries, and all of the other services that are available, that level of communication isn't always there, and people fall through the gaps at the moment. And that is a very genuine issue that many residents are facing. There's also data protection issues involved in all of this. Think about the amount of information that those surgeries are then sharing with each other, they're sharing with services, and then now are being shared with an American company coming in. Who has asked any of those residents whether or not they want their information shared in the way that it is? They may have the right to, under the letter of the law, but there has not been a jot of consultation with residents saying, just to let you know that an American company now owns your data. All of that private element, the private business element of this, complicates matters because GPs have always been a private business. I get that. But they've always operated NHS contracts and NHS services. So there is our complication, because that's public money being used in the private sector almost, in the sense of these being private businesses, to then effectively be at the mercy of companies coming in to take them over in the way that we've now seen. I want to thank the doctors for holding a meeting that they did hold for us, Madam Mayor, for those of us that they invited. And I think that's why it's important it goes to CEP and the whole of the council, because they invited some members to come along and they did try to explain what they were doing, and they were struggling with it. They were really struggling with the communication, levels of communication. But it's very poor. It's incredibly poor. And unless they get that right, no one's going to believe and have faith in where this is going. So yes, take it to CEP. Let's have that debate. Let's have it open in the public. But unless the GPs and the CCG get together in a way that communicates with residents, and the CCHG one, that represents 40,000 patients. 40,000 patients in Basingstoke. Unless they get their act together and start communicating properly, we're not going to solve this issue. People feel remote and they don't feel engaged by their local doctors. And that is such a problem. And that's just not on, and we need to resolve that. And I'm a big supporter. I will always be a supporter of the NHS first and foremost, and I will defend it to the hill. But what I don't want to see is residents on the other side of poor service and poor quality. And if there is anything we can do to bring scrutiny and accountability, I think that's worthy of all our efforts. So thank you for bringing the motion, and I support it and will be voting for it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey. We are beginning to run out of time on this motion, but as we're well on in the agenda, I'm happy to let the discussion run a little bit longer. But could you keep your responses fairly brief if possible? Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel I must correct Councillor Harvey on one point. The Operos are registered in Companies House as UK companies. They're 100% owned US subsidiaries. There's no indication that the data will go to the US of patients. So I'd want, given that we're in a public meeting, I'd want to make that reassurance to put our patients' minds at rest. Having said that, we don't have any guarantees in general with any British company or medical practice or whatever that as part of their IT operation procedures, data doesn't go offshore, but that's a separate conversation. At the end of the day, it's the UK taxpayer that picks up the bill. Although Operos, we understand, nominally own the practices now, it's still funded by the UK taxpayer. And the notion that a wholly US-owned corporation will somehow export money to the US, be it in operating margins or whatever, I think our residents would find reprehensible, because it's their money. It's not American money, it's their money. It should stay 100%, be reinvested within the NHS. And residents are rightly very paranoid about this as some form of creeping backdoor privatisation. I think that's why it's really important that we establish that local accountability. It's health. It's been difficult in the past, but it is something that matters a lot to our residents. And having had the meeting with the doctors, the Zoom meeting and a series of emails, and we had a town hall meeting with residents from all the affected areas, not just Brighton Hill and South Ham, but Kempshott, Hatch Warren, parts of the town, it was fairly self-evident that the problems that they've got, mainly due to doctors retiring, recruitment and retention, are not going to be easily solved. This was their attempt to solve it. Their hearts are in the right place. The doctors and the people that are in the CCG are 100% wanting to provide the best service. But what concerns me is the way that this is going and the way that the NHS has been structured, as has been mentioned by the councillors. And I think we might need to bring some parliamentary pressure to bear to get some more funding available to the NHS and look at the long-term prospects of GP provision. Because if we're struggling in Basingstoke with our good health outcomes, what hope for other parts of the country?
Thank you very much. I've got 3 more speakers. Could I have a fairly brief word from each one, please? Councillor George, first of all. Councillor George, are you muted? Are you there? I can see you're unmuted now, Councillor George. Okay. I'll come back to Councillor George if he appears. Councillor Regan. And Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just I endorse what the previous speakers have been saying, but I'd like to just make a few comments on my experience as a patient and my constituents, which we use this service. It's you used to be able to pick up a phone and get an appointment if you get past the receptionist, but over time there's been a deterioration in service. Actually, not once you see a doctor, not medical service, but the actual administration. And there's been, since COVID's come along, there's been an over-reliance on technology. That's always inevitable, it's always going to happen. But there's a total over-reliance, actually. So now you have to, if you want to see a doctor, you fill out a form and it's on the computer. Well, a lot of my residents haven't got computers, actually, so they have to use the phone and wait half hour to speak to someone. So so this deterioration in service is being enhanced by this over-reliance on technology. And there you have a video. Well, I've got an appointment all my appointments have been by phone, actually, and somebody speaks to me in the street the other day that they had a rash, and they said, "Can you take a photograph and send it to me?" I mean, I haven't got the ability to do that. So my minor comment is that the over-reliance on the technology, even though it's inevitable, there's got to be a balance. Thank you. And I worry if the Americans come along and the cost cutting, they are going for it even more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor George, are you able to give us a brief word? I'm sorry, Councillor George, I think you've lost your audio. Sorry about that. Councillor Jones, are you waving at me for a reason?
I am. My virtual hand doesn't work on mine.
Okay. Can you be brief? Because I've also,
yeah,
I do want to ask Councillor Sanders as well.
I will be voting for this amendment, obviously, but I think it's outcomes people want, and all the other speakers have been talking about their constituents. It's across Basingstoke, especially our side of Basingstoke, since we've had the original merger, and when we was on CEP, we tried to look at it. Yes, COVID come along, which delayed a lot of it, but we don't seem to be getting the response we want. Hopefully, I believe they are coming back to us. I'm looking at Councillor Gascoigne, that I think it's in January people are coming back. But we do need some answers. We're not just here as councillors sitting nicely in a chamber having an argument amongst ourselves. So it'd be good if did have some response. We take responsibility for our residents in our ward, you know, and it's very good that Councillor Bounds is involved as well, but sometimes the local councillors need to be a bit more involved and get more updates than what we do. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Can we have a final word from Councillor Sanders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've been here before. I spent quite a lot of my time when I was leader trying to get coordination between the hospital, the CCG, and Hampshire County Council for that matter. A lot of fine words. We got to see the Secretary of State, who said this is a very good idea. I'll put somebody on to doing this and having a look at what you can do in the borough. They went away, and as always happens, the Secretary of State was changed and it completely lost the momentum. And you finish up with exactly the same situation you had before. The CCG, the local practices ploughing their own furrow, the hospital ploughing its furrow. And then, of course, you have adult social care, which is ploughing a totally different furrow, funded in a totally different way. The whole organisation is completely dysfunctional, which lets down totally the practitioners who work so hard to give us the care that we get. Until somebody has the wit, the drive, the determination to grab hold of this whole thing, shake it up, and produce something which is well organised and is efficient, for instance, as Amazon, and I'll quote an American company, but they do efficiency rather well, then we're not going to get the service that we deserve to have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kim Taylor, would you like to say a few words in summing up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all members for their support in this. Councillor Harvey was correct to say that there is an issue about not having enough GPs, and certainly based on the GP numbers that the reduction in GP numbers in the Gillies, Camrose and Hackwood surgery, we're getting dangerously close to levels that some people might refer to as almost third world. Studies show that you need at least 1 GP per 2,000 patients, and we are going to be very soon approaching double that, which is really not adequate. Part of the picking up a little on what Councillor Saunders was saying as well in terms of systemic problems. It's becoming clear that we have real systemic issues and concerns about the commissioning model, because that doesn't appear to be working and delivering the goods for us. And also, given the fact that what we have now is a situation where partners in GP practices are retiring and they're proving impossible to replace because younger GPs simply don't want to be involved in a business model. They just want to be the freedom of being employees. What we're seeing is the GP practice model has broken as well. And that's pretty much across the country. And so that's why really I'm asking the leader to also write to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care to try to get an intervention not only locally, but also to think about how we reimagine policy and services in respect of GP services. I mean, if the GP practice model is broken, we need to imagine something very different. On that point, I have myself written to the Shadow Secretary of State raising these issues as well. So I hope that if we are able to do that as a joint thing, that we might get some progress, although obviously I'm not going to hold my breath in the light of the experience of Councillor Saunders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before we make the decision, I think Councillor Rattigan, do you want to say something?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Kim Taylor, I'd be delighted to share a joint letter to the Secretary of State, but perhaps we could get some formal words through committee first, so as we are all in agreement with it, not just yourself and myself, but we have the full force of the council decision at committee. Can I suggest that, therefore?
Thank you very much. So I'm sensing unanimous agreement on this. So to save an unnecessary roll call, can I ask for virtual hands if anyone is not in favour of the motion, in which case we will go to the vote. So please do say now. So we are all agreed unanimously that this motion is carried. Thank you very much for proposing it, Councillor Taylor. We move on now to our second motion. And again, let me know if you wish to speak electronically if you can, but Councillor Jones can wave at me. Can I invite Councillor McCormick to propose his motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief. This is a motion that's a fairly measured motion. I'm actually a big fan of firework displays. I do miss them this year because the vast majority of public displays have had to be cancelled for obvious reasons in like the pandemic. But what I think a lot of us probably don't like so much is the antisocial aspects of some of the firework related activities that generally tend to start mid-October and carry on through till the end of November, and then we have a resurgence over the Christmas and New Year period, people setting off fireworks, you know, at all hours, and also it can be quite alarming for people with pets when there are a large number of private displays in back gardens. That used to be less of a problem years ago, but some of the fireworks you can get now, especially some of the Chinese origin ones, are considerably more powerful and considerably louder. And so this is an attempt to try and get a degree of control over an activity that should be enjoyable for everyone. And there are plenty of things that we might want to celebrate with fireworks, not least Bonfire Night, not least Diwali or the New Year. And as long as we have a measured approach, I'm sure we can reach a compromise that's reasonable for all concerned.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones, you're seconding this. Do you want to speak now or later?
No, I'll speak now. I think it's self-explanatory, this motion, but I don't think it's a killjoy motion. I'll be honest, I like fireworks and I think they're a good thing for the town and everything else. I hope the whole chamber will support this motion, because the idea is it's public awareness. You know, people sometimes let off fireworks in their back garden, not realising what there's vulnerable people out there who can't deal with the noise, animals, of course. And if we could get a letter off to the government, we're asking for 90 decibels. That's high. Keep it at that, keep it low. But what I really would like to see on a personal basis is the mayor's display coming back again. When I was mayor, the park was packed with residents. We made money for my charity and also another charity. And I think it's something we should be doing. It keeps the town together. And I've never really understood why we actually done away with it. But I'll leave it at that, because I think, as I said, the motion itself is self-explanatory. It's not anti-fireworks. It's just getting people aware what it actually does to people who can't deal with the noise and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got 4 speakers. Councillor Eachus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do agree with this motion and totally accept what Councillor Jones is saying, that it's not meant to be anti-fireworks or etc. But I take on board what both people have said. Just really some information that I've obtained this week in speaking to officers, but then happy to work to push this forward and what the movers of the motion want. So it is a requirement of events organisers who run firework events on council land to submit a marketing and advertising plan to the council, but this isn't designed to inform residents for the protection of animals. So having discussed this with officers, they have said we probably could look to ask event organisers to give advance notice of fireworks on posters, signs around the area, and using social media a lot more, and we can deal with the issues of animals there. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have the powers to require private landowners to advertise firework displays, but again, that might be something that we could write to government about. If it's private lands, then our events team are rarely told unless they have to comment because of the safety advisory group due to the scale of the event and the impact. Again, speaking to comms, I'm sure it would be possible for them to do a campaign around the right times on firework and animals. There are typically 4 firework events each year on BDBC land. Most of them around the fireworks season. The other event is Carter's Steam Fair at the War Memorial Park. As a council, we can't and don't license the sale of fireworks. That's traded standards through HCC. The noise limit, which I know one of the movers referred to, that is set by the Fireworks Act 2004 and is currently 120 dB. I know that we've mentioned 90, so again, it might be something we need to push government on. Retailers must only sell fireworks that conform to British safety standards. I've then got a whole load of information on that, but I won't go through it all now. But again, they should only be selling during the week leading up to bonfire night and other special events. Otherwise, they must have a totally different licence. There are then offences under the 2004 Act. The enforcement doesn't rest with us, it rests with the police, who have the power to issue penalty notices. Again, it might be something that we need to take up with government and legislation. And then there's other legislation, which again, in my view, and probably the movers would agree, could be a bit more robust. So that's just some information I've obtained. And like I say, happy to work with the movers and comms and everyone to try and do other things when it comes to fireworks season.
Thank you, Councillor Eachus. We're still having a lot of trouble hearing exactly what you're saying. I don't know if anything can be done about the quality of your audio, because you've had quite a lot to say tonight and it's been a bit difficult. Did I understand that you said that as far as the first item on the resolution, that we can't require all public firework displays within the local authority boundaries to be advertised in advance? In which case...
So it's a requirement of event organisers who run firework events on councils to submit a marketing and advertising plan, but that doesn't inform the public. But officers have said they could look to ask event organisers to give advance notice of fireworks on posters and signs around the area. I know when they were saying there's also issues with rules we've got around posters, because we don't want, there's planning, you can't just put posters everywhere, but I'm sure if we were to give permission, that is something that we could look to do more of around the fireworks season. But if it's private land, then our powers are quite minimal.
Yeah, okay, so what I'm getting is therefore that we can't really pass a motion if it's impossible to carry out. Will we have to ask the proposer if we can slightly amend it to say just something like, to seek to require all public firework displays to be advertised in advance?
Yeah, that might be sensible. And then I don't know where this goes. Are we taking this to a committee? Because it might be we can have some more detailed information. And because a lot of it I've got so much information here from officers, and a lot of it is legislation. Like the sound is under legislation and our powers are under legislation. So it may be more of a issue of lobbying government or writing a letter to the appropriate minister or something.
Councillor McCormick, do you want to just change that first one so that we can actually vote for it? I think the other 3 are okay, but it's got to be within our power to do something.
Okay. My understanding is that a public display is something that members of the public are invited to. So there's public displays on council land. We control the land, so we can require them to do that. There's public displays on private land where we have very limited influence, and then there's private displays on private land. We've absolutely, like somebody setting fireworks off in their back garden. There's very little we can do about that, apart from maybe environmental legislation, and 120 dBs is a lot. So I'm happy to make a change. So to maybe change the word require to request, if that works.
So it would say to request all public firework displays within the local authority boundaries I think we can certainly request something. If you're happy with that, and if your seconder is happy with that. Yes, Councillor Jones is giving me the thumbs up. Are we all agreed that we can just change that word require to request so that we can have a motion that's legitimate and can be carried out? I haven't got any new hands coming up, so I'll assume that that's okay with everybody, but I will continue to go down the list just to hear what others have to say. Once again, we'll have to keep it fairly brief because we are running out of time. Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Remember the 5th of November, McCormick, restrictions or not. I see of no reason why the fireworks season should ever be forgot. A quick read of the Collins English Dictionary, I borrowed one from a fellow councillor, shows the word public to mean concerning of the people as a whole. Therefore, this motion seeks to impose restrictions on the right of a private citizen to hold a firework display on their own land, something I cannot support. Fireworks are a great source of entertainment. Their sales are restricted to set times of the year, with fines imposed for mis-selling or misusing, and noise is restricted too. The vast majority of residents are considerate, inform their neighbours, and of course are sensitive to the effects on animals and vulnerable people. But it is simply not the role of this council to restrict what volume fireworks should be. Motions like this, I'm afraid, are often geared towards controlling fun or banning things they don't like. I appreciate Councillor McCormick's view on this, but if he's intent on banning things he doesn't like, I suggest he starts next year on opposition parties and not on a toddler's right to enjoy a freezing cold evening, holding a sparkler, listening to the bangs, and watching the beautiful explosions which light up the night sky. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to say that while the focus of this motion does appear to be animals, more consideration I feel needs to be taken for people with mental health issues, particularly veterans, sufferers from anxiety, who really do have a large problem with the noise from the fireworks. From what I can see from this motion, it doesn't seek to limit fireworks per se, just to stop the bangs. Now, when I was a child, I remember going to firework displays and it was about the colour, it was about the sparkle and the spectacle. These loud bangs weren't something at all that that was there, and it's only been in recent years that the volume has continued to increase. And it is not good for our elderly residents or anyone who suffers from anxiety, PTSD. And I really think that all this motion seeking to do is to limit the noise that these fireworks produce. We all love fireworks. We all love this pretty sparkly stuff, but the noise is unbearable. And a lot of elderly residents I've spoken to around firework nights, it sounds like the Blitz again. A lot of our elderly residents came down from the London overspill and they said it's like being back in the Blitz. It's not fun for them. Sure, go with the sparkles. All we are seeking to do with this motion is to promote quieter fireworks, which surely doesn't cut down on the fun, and it means that a lot of our residents will be a lot more settled round about November time. It's not seeking to ban anyone's fun. It's just maybe to enhance the fun for a lot more residents that find firework season terrifying. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kinnear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fireworks are used by people throughout the year to mark different events. While they can bring much enjoyment to some people, they can cause significant problems and fear for other people and animals. They can be a source of fear and distress for many animals, including pet animals, farm livestock, and wildlife. Animals affected not only suffer psychological distress, but can also cause themselves injuries, sometimes very serious, as they attempt to run away or hide from the noise. Village firework events are well publicised, however, private events are sometimes not. Rural areas, especially where there are horses in fields, do require advance notice, so they can prepare themselves and their pets sooner rather than just before the fireworks are let off. We need to raise more advance awareness about the impact of fireworks on animals to the wider public to encourage them to be more considerate of those with pets, horses and livestock. as well as local wildlife. It is also likely that fireworks and their debris will cause disturbance to wildlife and are likely to cause suffering or distress, depending on the distance from the explosive and the noise level. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Let's move on fairly quickly, as again we're running out of time somewhat, but we will go to the end. Councillor Michael Bound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I broadly agree with the motion, particularly when I remember when I was a boy and our dogs at home who were absolutely terrified by the bangs and pops, but that was on firework night. And in those days, I suspect that the explosions were very much less than the huge bangs that you get nowadays, as has already been mentioned. In saying that, I feel that encouraging local suppliers to stock quieter fireworks won't cut the mustard. I mean, surely they'll sell what's available. And what does 90 decibels actually equate to? Is it a shooter blasting away with a 12-bore shotgun, perhaps, or a dog barking loudly? But the harm does depend on where you are relative to the noise, I suspect. So I will be supporting this motion. I feel that it's got that the feelings at its heart are well meant. And I certainly do not agree with Councillor Tristan Robinson on his little diatribe there. I don't think that had any merit whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Raffel.
Madam Mayor, I don't feel this motion is actually about public safety, because as anyone who's got anything to do with fireworks will know, it's very heavily regulated, and those of us who let off fireworks regularly with the view to doing it responsibly are well aware of the regulations and take a lot of care. This has got everything to do with the fact that a number of people over the years, especially the younger variety, tend to let things off and have great fun letting them off in all sorts of strange locations and upset people. It's rare that that happens in the rural environments. Occasionally people, yes, do have a big birthday party and forget that neighbours have animals out and about, but it's rare because in the rural environment, most people sort of say we're having a shindig and people put their animals away in their stables or whatever. In the urban environment, it's of course completely unconstrained, and whatever you're talking about here is not going to stop any of that. So I'm a great fan of fireworks. I think they teach us a lot about life, about what goes up comes down. It doesn't matter how much noise you make, it's all over in a flash. And I like seeing fireworks around and about, especially within the Labour group. The louder the better. As far as I'm concerned, as someone who has regularly let off fireworks, you learn about the danger. I mean, I could regale you with lots of personal experiences, but that would probably get onto YouTube, so I won't. I would just say that I don't like this motion. I think it's telling people what to do in micro detail. I mean, we've lived through a year of being nannied, and we've all got different views on it. From one extreme saying, oh, I need to be told everything I do, to the other extreme, please let me go because I want to live my life. And this is an issue that we just don't need to be nannied upon. I'm sorry. I mean, if there's antisocial behavior where you live, then deal with it that way. Please, please don't tell people who have a back garden who want to let off some garden fireworks around about the 5th of November that they have to knock on all the doors of their neighbours because some of them might be have a nervous anxiety, or their hearing aids might be turned up full volume if they're elderly and might deafen them suddenly, or alternative, they've all got to put their cats indoors. I mean, please just let people be. You know, these aren't the lunatics who are letting off massive fireworks in the back gardens in Popley. I really don't think that's what's going on here. And this is trying to use some sort of big explosive to blow up a very small problem. And I just don't think we really need to be doing it. And I'm all in favour of, on this issue, just letting people get on with their lives, please. So I'm going to vote against this. And if you disagree with me, fair enough. But there are some things where it's important to stand up for just our freedom when we have got a chance to do it, when we're all suffering from lots more constraints that are far more serious than this. And please take all my comments in the good spirit it's made. I meant to try and cheer you up because it's nearly Christmas.
Thank you very much. Now I've got two more speakers. Could you both be pretty brief, and then we'll just have a sum up. Councillor Kintaylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I look forward to the invitation to Councillor Raphael's firework party over Christmas, as long as it's not too loud. I think as somebody who has a family that has a high number of service personnel, some of them veterans, the noise issue is sometimes a little more serious than you might appreciate. And really, this isn't about saying we don't want fireworks. It's about a general move that's going on to say, could we make them a bit quieter? And as the proud owner of my own personal copy of a dictionary, I'm happy to advise Councillor Robinson that public can also mean existing in open view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being so brief. And I'm sure Councillor Stuart Frost will be as well. Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will try to be. As an ex-veteran of 32 years standing, I have to say that I don't enjoy, fireworks as much as I used to, due to the sound of the percussion quite often from the aerial fireworks going straight through you. But I know some people enjoy it. However, okay, I do think fireworks are a good thing. Okay, I know that it celebrates, people set off fireworks to celebrate not just the 5th of November and the historical, attempt to blowing up the Houses of Parliament, but also for Diwali and other customs. I just wish that certainly my neighbours, okay, would be a little bit more considerate. Okay, and let people, certainly me, know. Okay, so I can kind of brace myself, if you excuse the expression. However, I will not be supporting the motion. Okay, whilst I don't like fireworks now because they do cause me some distress, I recognise people's right to actually, set them off. Okay, and therefore I will not be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCormack, would you like to just briefly sum up for us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, in response to the query about how loud is 90 decibels, well, the sound, the threshold of harm is 85 decibels, which is marginally louder than heavy traffic, especially trucks and noisy motorbikes and things like that. 90 decibels is actually quite loud. 120 decibels is something like a rock concert or a very loud stadium, and you will get long-term damage. There have been quite a few cases of rock stars who've had to have hearing implants, as a result of being in that environment for a long time. In response to the concerns raised by various councillors, notably Councillor Robinson Jr., public does not mean private gardens. I mentioned that in my earlier, in introducing this there, and in the point of clarification, you have public displays which are open to invitation of members of the public. They can be held on public land or they can be held on private land. We can control what happens on public land. We have limited influence on what happens on private land. Private displays in back gardens are not public. They're for members of the family and friends to come round. The impact of those, we don't have much mitigation on, but a recommendation that fireworks that are sold to general public are 90 decibels or less goes some way to alleviating some of the problems we have with vulnerable people who are sensitive to loud noises, and people with PTSD and things like that, and animals. So that's why I'm supporting this motion. In terms of if we want to refer it to a committee, I would recommend CEP, because it's mainly an environmental thing. And it's about, when we talk about people's rights to do things, we also have to talk about people's responsibilities and their neighbours' rights to peace and quiet. And yes, in an ideal world, we would have people saying, tomorrow I'm going to have a firework display, and I appreciate it doesn't happen and we have to live with that. But this is an attempt to have a measured response to that, to recognise the concerns of people, and hopefully we can continue to have firework displays going into the future for a very long time to come. Otherwise, if we do get mounting opposition to it, fireworks could be a thing of the past.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just before we go to the vote, I just need to remind you, therefore, that this motion has a 4-part resolution, and you'll need to obviously agree with all 4 parts to vote for it. First, obviously, to request that public firework displays are advertised in advance. Secondly, to promote a public awareness campaign about the impact of fireworks. Thirdly, to write to the government urging a restriction to 90 decibels. And fourthly, to encourage local suppliers to stock quieter fireworks. Okay, so the vote is now going to be taken by roll call. So can you open your microphones? And I'll invite Fiona to call names in alphabetical order. When your name is called, say for, against, or abstain, and then switch off your microphones. Okay? Fiona.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ashfield.
Support.
Can I have another glass of wine, please?
Councillor Bean.
For.
Councillor Michael Bound.
For.
Councillor Simon Bound.
For.
Councillor Capon.
Against.
Councillor Carruthers.
For.
Councillor Cousins.
Abstain.
Councillor Cubitt.
Against.
Councillor Eachus.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Jane Frankham.
For.
Councillor Paul Frankham.
For.
Councillor Freeman.
For.
Councillor Frost.
Against.
Councillor Gardner.
For.
Councillor Gaskell.
For.
Councillor George. Might need to indicate, because I think you're having a problem with your audio.
Can't see him at the moment. Where is he? Oh, yes. Okay. I just found him. He's saying no, against.
Against. Councillor Goderson.
For.
Councillor Golding.
For.
Councillor Grant.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Hickling.
For. Oh.
Councillor Hussey.
For.
Councillor Isaac.
Against.
Councillor Gavin James.
For.
Councillor Kuzniecki.
For.
Councillor Kinnear.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Leeks.
For.
Councillor Lovegrove.
For.
Councillor McCormick.
For.
Councillor Mackay.
For.
Councillor Mahaffey.
Abstain.
Councillor Miller.
Against.
Councillor Phillimore.
For.
Councillor Putty.
Abstain.
Councillor Regan.
For.
I understand Councillor Reid didn't come back into the meeting. I'll just call her name in case. Councillor Reid. So she's absent. Councillor Rattigan.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Raphael.
Against.
Councillor Sanders.
Against.
Councillor Still.
For.
Councillor Diane Taylor. Councillor Kim Taylor.
For.
Councillor Mark Taylor.
4.
Councillor Tilbury.
4.
Councillor Tomlin.
4.
Councillor Vox.
Abstain.
Councillor Watts.
4.
Councillor Janet Westbrook.
Abstain.
Councillor Michael Westbrook.
Against.
Sorry, was that against?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. And Councillor Wooldridge.
4.
Thank you. If you can just bear with me for 1 second. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was 35 for, 13 against and 6 abstentions. So the motion was carried.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for that discussion. The motion, as Fiona said, is carried. Moving quickly on, apologies that you haven't had a break, but I think we can probably now just forge ahead until the end as we're nearly there. Is that okay? Item 14, questions to the chair or cabinet of the cabinet or a committee. You've got obviously your list of committee meetings in order of date. When you ask your question, can you give the exact location of the section you're speaking about? Councillor Wooldridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to ask a follow-up question, please, to the portfolio holder for housing. Following my question at the last full council meeting about private renters, in particular, his commitment to write to Robert Jenrick about the government policies in relation to no fault Section 21 evictions. Just wanted to know what response he got from Robert Jenrick, please.
Is that Councillor Tristan Robinson?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wooldridge. We haven't had a response yet, I know, but I will double check with the team and we will chase that up.
Thank you very much. Have we got any other questions?
Could you, when you get it, could you forward it to me, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no more hands raised. Therefore, we'll move on to item 15, questions from members of the council on notice, and we have 3. Councillor Vox, would you like to ask your question first, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question as is on the order paper.
Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Vox, for your question. Throughout the year, the Social Inclusion Partnership, of which the council are a part, worked tirelessly to help the most vulnerable in the borough. After committing to eradicating rough sleeping in the borough by 2024, I am proud to be able to say that we currently have no one sleeping on our streets, and further, no households in bed and breakfast accommodation either. These fantastic achievements are entirely down to the innovative partnership approach and joint working of the SIP and deliver on our public pledge to eradicate rough sleeping in Basingstoke and Deane by 2024. As Cabinet member, I've been privileged to work as part of a team dedicated to achieve this goal, Back in 2016, we had 26 rough sleepers in the borough, but this has consistently fallen due to the tremendous progress that has been made in tackling rough sleeping and the causes of rough sleeping, particularly with support tailored to each individual and not a one-size-fits-all approach. By bringing the council, voluntary sector, accommodation providers and key services together in the SIP, we've allowed the borough to deliver something truly special, changing many lives for the better. And I'd also like to thank my predecessor, Councillor Terry Reid, for her hard work, commitment and long-term support. Since COVID bit in March, our specialist team of housing officers have provided advice and support to 1,039 residents. And their advice and support prevented homelessness for 90% of those households. Of the remaining households, 63 have been supported into settled accommodation and 41 found alternative arrangements. I'm also pleased to be able to confirm that we're bringing forward plans for a new bespoke 23-bedroom building with 24-hour support for people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. The new building at 180 Culver Road will help us tackle invisible forms of homelessness and ensure that no resident has to turn to the streets again. I'd like to thank the ward members, Councillor Jack Cousins and Councillor Mike Westbrook for their ongoing support for this key project. While these are fantastic achievements, collectively we are all agreed that the hard work starts now to keep this figure at or close to zero. We must not be complacent, and we will continue working with our partners and local charities to build on our successes and find new solutions to meet the needs of our most vulnerable residents and support them in their journey away from the streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Vox, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a supplementary, just to congratulate all the parties involved who have made this happen, because I think it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Wooldridge, would you like to ask your question?
As per the order paper, please.
Which cabinet member is going to take this up?
That one's me as well.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Wooldridge. As Cabinet Member for Homes and Families, benefits comes under my portfolio, which is why I'm responding. In March 2020, the government announced that the standard allowance in universal credit and the basic element in working tax credit would increase by £20 per week from the 6th of April for a period of 1 year. As neither of these benefits are administered by the local authority, unfortunately, we don't have the data relating to the number of people in the borough who are benefiting from that temporary increase. However, to ensure that people receiving the increased working tax credit were not entitled to less housing benefit due to the increase in their income, the additional earnings disregard award in housing benefit was also increased by £20 per week. This means that they received the full benefit of the additional £20. In April 2020, there were 910 households in receipt of housing benefit and the additional earnings disregard. That was 910 in April. The figure currently stands at 716 households. For customers in receipt of universal credit and claiming housing benefit, the increase in standard allowance did not adversely impact the amount of housing benefit they are entitled to. Residents in receipt of housing benefit or the housing element of universal credit can be awarded additional discretionary housing payments, financial assistance toward housing costs. Those have been administered by the Council's Benefits Service. In addition to the financial support, residents are supported with budgeting advice and signposted to appropriate support services. At the moment, there doesn't appear to have been a substantial increase in the amount of financial assistance made available through DHP compared to 2018-19, while the total number of households assisted has in fact reduced. This is probably a result of the other welfare and support packages implemented by the government, such as the furlough scheme for employees and income grants for some self-employed people. I appreciate that was a complex answer, Madam Mayor, but hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you very much. We've just got time for a really quick supplementary if you have one, Councillor Wooldridge. Councillor Wooldridge? No, yeah, I think you're shaking your...
No,
oh, you are.
I'm on, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your answer, but it really doesn't answer the question whatsoever in any way, shape or form. My question is more about the fact that people on universal credit and the tax credits equivalent have actually benefited for the last year from that £20 uplift, which has been a lifesaver for them. It's helped them pay for utilities, and the fact that children have been at home in many, and they've had to sort of cope with the extra costs of that, and sort of heating, etc., etc. It's quite clear that this coronavirus is going to go on much longer into beyond next March, which is when it's due to end. And my question is more geared as to why the government hasn't made the commitment to carry on permanently beyond April, because at the moment that commitment isn't there. People on these benefits have to do really careful budgeting. Say if their washing machine sort of breaks down, they have to then work out whether they can afford a new one, and often they will take a loan from their universal credit to fund that new one, and then have to pay it back at a rate each month. And if they know that that's going to be carrying on, for example, beyond April, they might be able to make that commitment. But if they don't, that they will be basically not be able to afford a new washing machine, because they won't be able to take that risk. So my question is, why this government really is just keeping people, our most vulnerable people, sort of waiting in this situation where they don't know what's going to happen from the end of March onwards. We're talking about benefits being at their lowest level really since the early 1990s. The rate of £73 a week, and all I'm really asking in this question is that you sort of take a lead on behalf of this council and do what a lot of campaigning groups are doing at the moment to encourage the government to see sense and to make this change permanent, rather than keeping people dangling on until sort of the springtime on this. So that's what I'm asking you to do. So whilst your answer was all very interesting, it really didn't answer the question at all. So I look forward to see what you've got to say now. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, can you answer any of that?
Thank you. I will certainly try. I mean, the original question made reference to how many households are currently claiming these benefits at Basingstoke and Dean that this would affect, which I think I did answer as part of that. On the point around the additional amount of money, clearly that's not a matter for me. That is a matter for central government. The spending review, which came out today, officers did have a look at that. That came out at around lunchtime today. Officers have had a quick look. However, nothing has been seen within that. So I don't think that's been announced today. However, that may change in the March budget announcements for central government. And I'm very happy to include that in any pre-commentary or lobbying that we have with the government, in particular with MHCLG, to ensure that that the case is pressed to keep that payment permanent for the future. Hopefully that directly answers that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So our last question is to the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and the Natural Environment. Councillor Konietzko, would you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As per the order paper, please.
Councillor Raffel.
Madam Mayor, can I thank Councillor Konietzko for his question? Well, the plans do go far enough, because the plans only were to have a cycle link between the roundabouts and the road, Sullivan Road. So that's what they were there for. You appreciate that when a scheme comes forward, it can only do certain things at certain times. But that's probably just your phraseology in your question, because what you're actually saying is, look, can we do more? The answer is, aspirationally as a borough council, I'm with that. I'm on board. I want it to happen. It will happen. It's just going to take time, like all these things do, because of priority of finances. as you know, because we turned up to the same meeting with other councillors to discuss what was happening at the Brighton Hill roundabout, will be progressing this further. And of course, I have had a report put before EPH committee regarding the transport strategy. I want to see the equivalent of cycle superhighways that allow people to cycle at speed, unimpeded, without buses getting in the way, without motorists getting in the way for some distance. The A30 provides some opportunity for that, but it needs planning. And I don't know if that is going to be something that we can plan for in the next year or two in terms of making it happen, or whether it's going to take slightly longer. The public are becoming more and more acceptable. I'm a great believer in the fact that when you get to the headlight, the traffic lights, traffic, if it sees 10 bicycles, is going to understand that it's going to have to live with cycles on the road. When you have one bicycle on the road, it becomes far more vulnerable, the cyclist is, to multiple cars and vehicles going past. And we're in that shift perhaps in Basingstoke, and I hope we are in that shift, where the cyclist, along with other forms of transport, but the cyclist is going to increase and make their presence felt on the highway more. And this is a start in that process. So I'm fully in favour of that. I've done everything I can. As the councillor knows, we are not the highway authority, but I'm dragging them in, and they are very compliant with this now, to EPH committee at every opportunity, so that members can hear what's happening. I've made sure that these reports that we have are not sitting on shelves and gathering dust by saying, look, annually we must keep looking at this. Have we made progress? Are we moving forwards? And I think generally the soundings I get from the committee are, on balance, yes, we are. It could always be we can do more, and we are seeking to do more as a consequence. So if his question is aspirational, I agree. I don't think it's critical, but if it was, I disagree. But I don't think it is. I think it's aspirational. I agree entirely. I like cycling. He probably does too. I don't know. And if it becomes safer because more people are doing it, and if we can make it happen in Basingstoke, that's got to be a great thing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Koniesko, do you have a final very brief supplementary, or is that okay?
I do. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Yes, my
Okay.
question was not in any way meant to be critical. It was seeking improvements. At the moment, as Councillor Fell has indicated, there are cycle paths leading off the plans for Brighton Hill roundabout that will leave cyclists just dumped in the middle of a road, potentially around some very dangerous junctions. So any steps he can take to liaise and lobby with Hampshire County Council, the planning authority, to make sure that those cycle routes coming off the roundabout are as safe as possible would be hugely appreciated by me, by residents all over the town as well. So I'd be grateful if you could take that on board. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Raphael.
Madam Mayor, I agree, and happy Christmas.
Well, thank you. Which brings me to just saying we have no reason to exclude the press and the public, as we have no confidential or exempt items. I therefore declare this meeting of the council over.